afternoon and welcome to today's webinar from First Voice, sponsored by Virgin Media Business. Today we're looking at preparing your business for the digital economy. A recent innovation report by Oxford Economics highlighted how the digital revolution could still be worth an extra $92 billion a year to the economy. Yet many firms are still unsure how digital will change the nature of their industries. But change is coming, so what does that mean for small businesses? Well, it's a great opportunity, but to benefit, firms need to adapt. In this webinar, we'll examine how firms can develop new digital capabilities and innovate. But before we begin all that, I'd like to briefly explain the format. During today's event, our speakers will make a presentation and provide simultaneous commentary. Following that presentation, I'll put any questions you sent in to them before we wrap up. We're really keen to address any questions or comments you have throughout the session, so please do submit them. You can use the question box that's visible on your screens to send questions. Simply type in your question and then press send. You can do this at any time throughout the hour. Okay, we've got two great speakers for you today. Our first speaker is Steve Wind-Mozley. Steve is Director of Digital with Virgin Media Business. And our second speaker is Bernadette Kelly. Bernadette is Director of Business Development with Active Wind Media and a digital innovator. Between them, Steve and Bernadette will take us through how small firms can make the most of digital marketing opportunities. These, they say, are the 7 C's of digital. Now, we've got a lot to run through this afternoon, but before we get to that, we're going to run a very quick poll. And the question should appear on your screens in just a second. And it's a simple one to start. And the question is, what's the biggest challenge you face in building a digital presence for your business? What's the biggest challenge you face in building a digital presence for your business? Is it a lack of digital expertise in your business? Is it the cost of transforming your business into a digital operation? Or is it something else entirely? I'll just quickly run through those options again. Is it a lack of digital expertise in your business, the cost of transforming to a digital operation, or is it something else? Now, we should be able to see those results in just a second. Any minute now, I'll be able to see them. And that makes interesting reading. Look at that. That's almost two-thirds, 64.5%. It says a lack of digital expertise in the business. Okay, very interesting results, and that's probably something, at least a topic we'll return to in the Q&A, but it's time to crack on. So without any further ado, I'll hand you over to Steve to kick off. So over to you, Steve.
Thanks, Oliver, and welcome to the call. Thanks for taking the time out of your busy days. Listen, if you're on this call, you know that digital is important, right? And you know that digital touches more things and has more routes to market than ever before. During this webinar, we're going to take you through a concept that we believe can help you navigate your way through the complexity of this digital space. And because we're brand-led today, hopefully we'll help you #Boom, or to put it another way, start to realise your digital potential. So what are the 7 C's? Well, they're a framework that can help you avoid being a digital pirate and falling into some of the pitfalls out there. And hopefully we can increase your chances of being a digital pioneer for both your brand and your business. Now, as we go through the 7 C's, Bernadette Kelly, sitting next to me, will help us keep on track and will add some digital insight from her real-world experience out in the marketplace. So let's start with customer. Knowing your customer and earning the right to know them better is a huge part of any effective marketing strategy. It's not enough any longer just to recognise a customer. I don't know if you remember those credit card makers back in the 90s that kind of went, "Hi, Stephanie, we noticed, Stephanie, that you've not responded to our offer yet, Stephanie. Stephanie, you only have 5 days to respond, Stephanie, so Stephanie, please act now." Now, clearly they didn't recognise me because I'm not called Stephanie, or at least not to my knowledge, but they didn't know me. Now, today's customers expect more. They expect much more. And that means that we, as marketeers, need to build solid customer data around our bases. And that can be daunting. That can be really daunting. So, quick question. How do you eat that elephant? The answer, of course, is one spoonful at a time. And it's the same with building and leveraging your customer data sets. You can start small and you can grow over time. But where to start? Ask yourself some simple questions. Who is your audience? What do they look like? What are their demographics? And if you sell to businesses, what are their firmographics? Who are they? What history do you share together? Have they bought anything from you? Have they visited you? Have they complained to you? Have you pushed messages to them? Each of these contacts is a data point, a valuable data point that you can start to collect together to help you draw out some valuable insights. What drives your customers' behaviours? Looking at customers' needs, their aspirations and desires is often overlooked because it's harder to measure, and we digital folk like to measure everything. But it requires a sustained conversation with your base. If you persevere, you'll be able to uncover your customer's intent and how that intent changes as they traverse your customer journey and move through time. People often spend a lot of time thinking about predictive analysis, and this is where it all gets a little bit and very scary. But all you're looking to do is a simple piece of T analysis. People who look like this, what are they likely to do, and can I apply that knowledge to the customer in front of me today, right now? And can I use some machines or automation to help me do that faster? You don't need to go to Netflix levels of data science mining. You just need to have a simple idea about what the next best action is going to be for the customer in front of you. Now, moving towards a slightly more practical standpoint, if I may, it's always good to have a very clear idea as to what each of your customers is worth to you, both now and in the future, if they respond to your messaging. What's their customer lifetime value, if you will? Now, to do that, you need to know what life stage they're in currently. Are they totally unaware of your existence? Are they actively considering your brand? Are they a new customer, a stable, happy customer, a potential lapser, or have they indeed lapsed and stopped buying or interacting with you? Add to all this a view as to what the customer thinks of you. You know, NPS is a great tool, but a quick survey monkey or a course to even some ratings and reviews, or even just asking your customer, is a great way of sampling your customer satisfaction temperature. So yes, when you think of customer, think data. Data, as you know, always brings big responsibilities around security and privacy. So guard it jealously. Treat it as your most valuable asset and don't squander it or allow it to go stale. Now, data governance and data hygiene are huge topics which we can't do justice to today. So, customer, yes, it's about data, but you can start small and grow. Build it up over time, and it can help point you to the things that will help you delight your customers. Bernie, any thoughts?
Yes, thanks very much, Steve. Just to touch on the point about data a little bit further, just briefly. At some point, as you'd be capturing personal data about your customers, things like emails, addresses, and in some instances, depending on your business, their credit card details, be mindful of how you store the information and make security a priority, because you do have legal duties to fulfill with data protection, and you must know what they are. Also be aware that identity theft is becoming more of an issue among SMEs. A good hacker can actually steal an identity with just a date of birth and a home address. So make sure your online security is robust and deters hacking. And it's not just about legal obligations. If you have a database and use email for marketing, don't fall foul of things like spam filters, because you could end up with more unsubscribers than subscribers and undo all that hard work. It sounds like a bit of a minefield, but there's a lot of online guides that can help you get the end result that you need. So if we move on to the next slide.
Thanks, Bernadette. So we're on slide C number 2, content. What do we mean by content? Yes, it's the words, it's the pictures, it's the videos, the graphics, and the polls that you publish to your site or digital touchpoints. But in my head, content is simply the stories that connect your customers to your brands, your products, and your services. And like any good story, there's a pattern to the construction to make it compelling. So you'll need some original content that's engaging, informative, and hey, even where possible, enjoyable. There's a reason why human beings spend more time playing than any other animal on planet Earth. We enjoy being engaged, we enjoy playing. Make your content enjoyable. It's a reward in and of itself. But to be engaging, it needs to have a strong narrative flow. You know, a beginning, a middle, and an end. If you're interested, Google story arcs for more information, and you'll get a really quick framework which will tell you how to do that sort of thing. So once you've got your stories in your head, you need to atomize your content. I don't mean blow it up, because that would be sort of destructive. Your audience are probably pretty busy doing their own thing, so your content has to cut through and be accessible. So be mindful of their attention span. Be word smart. So take that brilliantly crafted narrative and break it down into bite-sized chunks. If you've written a press release, why not repurpose it, cut it into pieces, push it out as tweets related to that press release. Then maybe repurpose the core article and publish it as a couple of blog posts. So create the story once, but publish it in many forms, in many times. And remember, people's attention span, in my experience, decreases in direct correlation to the size of the screen they're using. So be mindful of how people are going to consume your content. Curating content is another great way of maximizing its value. Now, you're the expert on your brand, your services, and your products. Sometimes being an expert can also mean that we can fall into the trap of becoming a bit of a bore, droning on about our favourite topics. But curation, when done well, allows us to add value to the content by arranging it in ways that will make it more appealing to certain segments of your customer group. Think about the curator of an art gallery and the stories they're trying to tell by selecting pieces of content and how they group them together. Well-grouped content means that your customers can discover new content, understand more complex stories, and get to their destination faster with your help. And curation, or editorial, also adds value. You're using your expertise to guide people in a soft and subtle way to a greater outcome. You can, of course, even use third-party content and add value to it by selecting the best and presenting that to your customers, taking out the legwork for them. I mean, everyone loves a good list of 10 of the best. Now, we can't mention content without talking about SEO, or search engine optimization. And we can't really delve into it too deeply here because it's a big topic. I know you all know that. Suffice it to say that if you are creating fresh, engaging content that has a clear purpose and starts with your audience in mind, then those SEM algorithms will tend to look kindly on you. If you try and game the system, black hat stuff that Bernadette will talk to you about, I'm sure, then you run the risk of getting banned. Bernadette, anything to say?
Yes, just following up on how content can play a big role in your SEO. If you keep on top of what people are searching for that's related to your industry and then provide great content around those topics, not only will you be doing good things to help your Google rankings, but you're also providing the value to your audience that Steve was just talking about. So make sure your content is sprinkled with these keywords, but remember that Google algorithms are constantly in flux. This forces sites to adapt and refresh their content. However, this shouldn't be thought of as a nuisance. It's really an opportunity to provide new, relevant content to potential customers if you get in before your competitors do. So that's motivation to make sure that you're constantly providing new data in a timely fashion. Now, on the flip side, don't get carried away and think about taking shortcuts. The overzealous use of keywords to promote content could be misinterpreted as what we call black hat tactics. And this is what search engine professionals call strategies that focus on tricking search engines. So things like paying for links on sites that are really there for the sole purpose of being link farms, or posting spammy comments on popular websites, plagiarizing content from other sites, or engaging in keyword stuffing where you're just constantly battering the same word into content. These are all likely to get you banned from Google and quickly earn you penalties, which includes your site being excluded from search results. So it's incredibly detrimental to your digital presence. So make sure that you have great content, repurpose it, but don't overpromote. So we move to the next slide.
Brilliant. And that takes us to our third C, which is conversion. And after customer, I think that conversion is probably the place where we probably spend most of our times. What do I mean by conversion? Well, put it another way, this is, what is the point of your digital strategy? What's it all for? What do you want your customers to do when they interact with you online or across your digital space? Is it to submit a form? Is it to watch a few more ads? Is it to sell them something? Whatever your critical success factor is, that single thing that you must do to help your business boom, make sure that you're focused on it, obsess about it, and that obsession will deliver dividends. So how do you do that? Well, set clear goals. It's often said that we like to measure everything in the digital space. It's not got a beacon tag on it, we don't want to know. But KPIs are powerful as long as they mean something to you. Don't just go and pick up somebody else's dashboard on Google and go, right, we're going to measure all these things. Make sure it means something to you. Whether it's marketing return on investment or conversion rate or dwell time, obsess on it and make sure that everyone in your team understands why it's important and how those levers will move. Now, conversion, measuring the thing that you want people to do, means that you have to think about how they do that. And one way of making sure that people get to the endpoint that you've set out and have in mind for your customer journey is to look at the amount of friction that you have within the barriers that stop people doing what it is you want them to do. So make sure your calls to action are easy to spot, and it's really basic, in logical places. We read from left to right. So make sure your onward actions are on, of course, the right-hand side and not on the left-hand side of the screen. Little things like that can really help because back at the turn of the century, Steve Krug came out with his mantra, which I don't think has been bettered yet today, and it still holds true. And of course, that's don't make me think. Don't make your customers work hard to understand what your intent was. Help them to do the thing that you want them to do next by making it very, very clear. Of course, if you're looking at conversion, you're going to end up thinking about some form of testing. Now, you're going to test, and then hopefully you will test, and then you will test again. So you'll form a habit, whether that's complex multivariate testing or whether that's simple A/B testing. Is my red button better than my blue button for converting? On a Tuesday, am I better at tweeting after bake-off or before bake-off? What converts best for me? You need to run a champion-challenger mentality. That means you run a test, you get a winner, hopefully. Sometimes you run a test and you won't get a winner. That's good too. Keep on testing. You then find something that works well for you, but don't rest on your laurels. Challenge the winning result with new ideas. Champion challenger, keep on going. Now, Google, bless them, have got a great A/B testing tool which is in Google Analytics for free. There are other tools on the market, so have a good look at those and get into the habit of testing. Of course, all this testing means that you're going to have to prioritize some of your activities. If you're clear on your goals and your key measures, then of course prioritization becomes simpler. What prioritization does mean and can sometimes be hard to accept is, of course, that sometimes you're not going to be able to do everything. That means that sometimes good enough is as good as it needs to be. Don't strive for perfection everywhere. Strive for perfection for the bits that will make the difference. And understanding which bits make the difference goes back to understanding what your key performance indicators are. Now, in your quest for improved conversion, keep it simple. Get into the habit of testing and benchmark your performance against other people in the same space as you, but also in competitors. Because remember, when you're online, you're competing for attention with everybody. Bernadette.
There are some common bloopers that can be avoided when considering conversion. For instance, resist the temptation to over-egg the pudding. And by that I mean there are businesses that want to provide as much information about their products as possible, and that's great. But all those words can get in the way of users picking up your call to action, and that's the very thing that you need them to do when they're online. So stick to the main benefits of your products, especially the things that make your business special. And don't sit on your laurels. Everything in digital moves at lightning speed. So what works today might not necessarily work tomorrow or in a year's time. So there's no substitute for keeping up on what's going on and adapting to new digital trends because they are out there. So let's move on to our next slide.
Thanks. We're on C number 4, you'll be pleased to know, of our 7, so we're doing well. It's context. Now, this is about being aware of and appreciating what's going on in your customer's world. Not necessarily in your world, but in your customer's world. I always like to think that if Aretha Franklin were a digital marketeer, she'll be telling you it's all about RESPECT, respect, respecting your customer. So being contextually aware means that you can show your customers the respect that they deserve by being aligned to their requirements. So, how do you stay relevant? Because context is all about relevancy. Think about the whole package. Is the message you're looking to land something that concerns them or interests them? What are they likely to be doing when you deliver that message? And what is competing for their attention at the time that you deliver it? Have you selected the right format for the message? Have you selected the right medium? I mean, do you really want to be using Snapchat to market to a bunch of retired octogenarians, maybe? Or is there another way of doing it? Of course, if you're going to be relevant, you need to think about personalization. And there are many organizations who will talk to you about big data and why that's really needed to help you personalize. Well, I'm not so sure. I think there are ways that we can approach it. I think it's an iterative approach. We all know that a bespoke dress is going to fit better than one off the shelf, right? But we also know that a bespoke, tailored dress is going to cost more. It's going to be harder to access than a ready-to-wear item. But I think by customizing the off-the-shelf, ready-to-wear version, you can unlock some of the benefit of being able to bespoke, but at a fraction of the effort. Let's put that another way. One-to-one marketing is a great idea, and we all want to get there. The ability to have a one-to-one conversation with everybody that touches your brand. But you need a lot of computing power and a lot of luck to get that right quickly. A segmented approach, where you take a cookie-cutter approach. You are roughly looking like these other people. I'm going to create a segment. You probably only need between 5 and 7 segments to segment your entire base. Enables you to go to market with a much more performer-based experience and buy yourself the time to sprinkle on a little bit of personality, sprinkle on a little bit of personalization, and that small sprinkle will go a long way. Finally, in context, you need to be empathetic. You need to put yourself in the shoes of the customer. So empathy, as you know, is not the same as sympathy. We don't want to feel sorry for customers. If we're feeling sorry for them, then really our customer experience must be dire. We want to avoid that. We want to try and tune into our customers' needs and wants, almost assess their EQ as well as their purchase intent IQ. Now, as data-led people in the digital world, we tend to shy away from measuring these softer measures because they're harder to do, right? It's much, you can't just build a dashboard and then assess it over time. You need to find ways to ask questions and observe customers that give you that insight. By getting that insight, or to get that insight, you need to spend a little bit of time in winning their trust and asking them questions about your customer experience.
And it's also something to bear in mind, being careful about developing a business personality disorder online. And what do I mean by that? It means know your target audience and cater to that specific demographic and cater your content around them. We've seen global brands do this in brilliant ways and not so brilliant ways. A recent example is piggybacking on popular hashtags. So the world knows that Brangelina is no more, and Norwegian Airlines took the opportunity to create a brilliant ad that went viral. And you necessarily wouldn't put airlines and Brangelina together, but they posted an ad that said Brad is single, and they featured a flight for 169 pounds to Los Angeles, where Brad lives. That was brilliant. It went immediately viral. We also have instances, for example, The Gap had a campaign right after Hurricane Sandy in New York City that used the Hurricane Sandy hashtag and encouraged people to shop online because they couldn't get out of the house due to the damage. So it's a clear example of taking context and using it in the right way to help your brand, and then using it with catastrophic results. So don't try to be everything to everyone. Adapt a personality that appeals to your audience and to the people who will buy from you, or else it could backfire spectacularly. So let's move on to slide 5.
Okay, our 5th C is all about community. Now, communities are interesting things. It's fraught with danger, but it's also fraught with lots and lots of treasure if we can get it right. Here we're seeking to harness the power of our customer bases by creating advocates, basically people who like what we do so much that they want to share it with others. Human beings like to be helpful. Right? They love to be recognised for being helpful, and even more, they love to be recognised for being knowledgeable, and they like to share that knowledge with others. You've got some stuff that they could be knowledgeable about. You could help them share that stuff, and you could reward them. But by sharing that stuff, they are effectively rewarding themselves. The community starts to reward them. They bask in reflected glory. We call that kudos, and we all know what that's about, right? Kudos is a powerful commodity, and it's time to start mining it, to start farming it even. So places to start are, of course, social marketing. First rule of social marketing is you have to be present. You've got to be there, right? But it's not enough just to be present. To pop up into someone's timeline without permission is probably going to be more brand damaging than anything else. Like mobiles, customers' social presences are their own personal space, and you've all been on the tube or on a bus when someone's invaded your personal space. You don't react well. You're not really going to be receptive to anything they're going to say, unless, of course, they happen to be Brad Pitt. Maybe, I don't know. But when you're acting and pushing your messaging into a personal space like a social area, you have to be aware that tolerance for errors is incredibly low. Get it wrong, hit the wrong tone, and you become irrelevant, you become invasive, and you become, well, let's just put it this way. It's not great for a social customer of yours to then start telling all of their friends what an awful experience they had at when your brand dropped up onto their Facebook page. Not a great place to be at all. But get it right, and trust and awareness are the rewards, and they're incredibly high. So thinking about advocacy, yes, there's an old adage, it's true that people buy from people, but guess what? People buy even more from people they know, and much more than that, from people they know well. So it's definitely worth investing in word of mouth, and digital word of mouth. This can be, expensive, but it can also be incredibly cheap. So there's a hairdresser's. I don't frequent a hairdresser. If you can see me, you can see why. But there's a hairdresser's bottom of my road that has a very simple social advocacy campaign, which is Selfie Saturday. Pop in of a Saturday, take a selfie with you and your stylist, and get £5 off. Genius idea. Grows advocacy, drives interest, and is in the zeitgeist for their client base. So, stuff like referrals, ratings, reviews, customer-created lists, and success stories all add a human, reassuring dimension to your marketing efforts. They add personality, but they add engagement. thinking about personality, if you are going to build a community, you'll need a couple of things, right? You'll need charisma and you'll need personality. So imagine that your brand's a person. Okay, take a moment. All right. Now, dress that person, send them out of your house or your office down to a coffee shop. Your brand's just rocked up into a coffee shop. It's going to interact with people. They're going to do something. They're going to judge it on first impressions. So what kind of personality or what kind of persona would you like to project for your brand? What attributes would it have? How would it behave in certain circumstances? But remember this, your brand persona needs to match your business and your business tone. There's no point in having a very jovial persona if perhaps you're an accountancy office, for instance. As Bernadette has said, try to resist borrowing popularity unless it's relevant. So leverage those trends that are relevant to you and your customers, and don't just seek to bandwagon jump and get on that zeitgeist. One of the biggest challenges, though, when you become active in the social space is to know when to be responsive. Apparently, I'm told, there's an election happening in a reasonable place in I think it's called the United States of America. And one of the proponents, a gentleman called Mr. Trump, has had a son. And the son, Trump Jr., tweeted about a popular candy called Skittles. And you can imagine for a second, if you were the social media manager of Skittles when you saw that story break, you must have been thinking, goodness, this is a lose-lose situation. I've got some issues which are dividing my nation, the nation, of course, which is my customer base, and I'm being dragged into it, and I'm just a candy brand. What do I do? Now, their response was a work of, in my opinion, genius. So they didn't respond to Trump Jr. In fact, they almost went and got their troll playbook and looked at that and said, well, what's rule one of a troll? What's rule one of responding to a piece of social commentary that you think could be dangerous and a zero-sum game? So how do you respond to a troll? Well, rule one is you don't feed the troll. So they didn't. They waited until a representative of their customer group contacted them and asked them for a comment. And then they responded clearly and succinctly and swiftly to that inbound question. Now, honestly, it's worth Googling, spend some time, but the way they dealt with it, and they elevated the debate away from, well, you can draw your own conclusions as to what you think about the debate, but their response was entirely keeping with their brand and closed down that avenue of trolling immediately. It's a textbook. Go and have a look. Sorry.
That was brilliant. right. Nice tie-in. Just to back up what Steve was just saying, you have an army of potential brand ambassadors in the social space. So don't be a social snob. There are brands who choose not to engage with proponents and supporters of their brands, or they don't follow people that follow them and tweet about them constantly. And there's this feeling almost of them being too cool for school or too cool to follow and engage with the very people who are sponsoring and supporting their brands. So be sure that you recognize people for the efforts that they're putting forward to promote your business to their friend, because social media really is the word of mouth of today. So let's move on to slide 6.
Great. Number 6 is convenience. So this is about how can you make it easy for your customers to do business with you. So simplicity, convenience, easiness. Or, as Einstein said, any intelligent fool can make things bigger and more complex. It takes a touch of genius and a lot of courage to move in the opposite direction. Now, obviously, modern world, we've now kind of condensed that down to basically mean it's really easy to make it complex. It's really hard to make complex simple. But take a little bit of courage and see whether we can apply maybe a slither of genius to come up with some rules that might help us get towards that opposite direction. First up is we should all kiss more. Yeah, you've all come across this. Keep it simple, stupid. Yeah. You're there because you solve a need for your customer base. They come to you because you make it easy for them to solve a particular need. And the value exchange is you're making it easy, stroke enjoyable for them to solve a particular need, and hopefully they're going to give you cash. Great. That's why they come to you. So don't make it hard for them. They want you to do all of the heavy lifting. That's why you exist. So it's kind of odd then that oftentimes we spend as marketeers a lot of time and money in interrupting our customers, stopping them doing what they want to do, and then trying to get them to do something they didn't know what they wanted to do. I'll give you an example. We might spend some money on a banner ad, and we know where our target demographic exists, so we buy some space on mumsnet.com, and we have a banner ad that is basically shouting for attention. Hi, you weren't willing to consider my brand right now. You were having a conversation about nappies and vaccination, but right now I want you to come and have a think about my X brand. And I want you to stop having that conversation that you came here to have and go follow me. Click on the link, go somewhere else. Come to my destination that I've had a team of people in London with no socks on, beautifully crafting and stroking their beards for many, many moons. It's wonderful. You should come. What are we doing? We're interrupting people and we're trying to get them to come to our destination because that's our concept of marketing. We build a destination, we're going to now start driving traffic to that destination so we can measure them, put them in our funnels and get them to convert and do the things that we care about. Brilliant. Or we could go, destinations, interesting. Yes, they're valuable, they're a great brand home, but you know what? Your customers are out doing other things, going about their daily lives. Why not build some services that can take our messages to our customers where they are? Why not let them interact with the brand where they are rather than dragging them back to us? So let's go to them. So services rather than destinations is a bit of a change. And it means that we then have to think about the ways that our customers might like to consume our messages, which of course means being device agnostic. So yes, we're all responsive nowadays, we would hope, only that's not quite so true. Certainly in the business-to-business space, still the laptop during working hours is the dominant browsing device. So we need to bear that in mind. Over in consumer land, then yes, it's mobile, and you can see huge spikes, particularly around commute times when people are filling downtime in other ways. So think about the devices, but more importantly, you're working hard to become channel agnostic so that you can allow your customer to choose when and how to engage with you. Now, back over to Steve Krug and his Don't Make Me Think. Yes, we need to fight that friction, remove what I would call the pain points within our customer journeys, whether that's a pain point because we're asking people to submit 5 full fields of personal data in order to engage with us, or whether that's a pain point because we're asking for a credit card or we're gating a piece of content behind some questions. Look at those pain points and understand where they are, understand how people struggle to do the thing you would like them to do, then test again to change it. Now, there are some great tools that enable you to watch the behavior of your target audience on your own estates anonymously, and they anonymize the data, but very quickly by just applying these tools you can see in real time how people don't do what you think they should do. So it's almost like a usability lab on the screen, and you can run it across all of your user groups. Usability is also a great way of doing this sort of stuff. But whichever route you take, whether it's lab-based or whether it's technology session viewing-based, I guarantee you will be surprised to see how small an amount of friction it takes to knock somebody off the path that you've carefully crafted for them. So spend time on usability across your marketing journey. you probably already think a lot about your conversion funnel usability, but think also about your acquisition funnel, all the way from awareness, all the way down to an engaged or marketing qualified lead. Where are the pain points that will stop that customer or that user group from doing the thing that you want them to do?
Thanks, Steve. When you think about it, really, convenience lies behind so much in digital. It's difficult to overstate that. For instance, the online phenomenon that is Black Friday is a story about convenience. Back in the day, Black Friday started in the States as the biggest sale day of the year following Thanksgiving, and people would sleep on the streets and do whatever they needed to do to get their hands on the hottest toys and snap up the best deals that there were. And we would see the evening news full of stories of mothers climbing over each other and beating each other up over Cabbage Patch dolls. Now, with the introduction of digital shopping, slowly the more nonviolent of us decided to do our shopping online. And for the first time in history, in 2015, Black Friday online sales rivaled those of brick-and-mortar retailers. Now, the Black Friday phenomenon has made its way across the pond, and we did see some of the literally fighting for deals happening here in the UK. But increasingly, online will overtake brick-and-mortar sales for retailers in the years to come. And that's because consumers don't want to fight for deals. They find it far more convenient to shop from the comfort and warmth of their own homes. So make sure that you're making it easy for your customers to work with your business and purchase and take up your calls to action through your digital presence. So let's move on to our final slide.
Fantastic. So the last of our C's, the seventh C itself, is cohesion. Now, your business, your organisation may exist in a few locations. You may have presences across a number of channels, both online and offline. You may have a number of products sitting within your brand story. But to your customer, your brand is a single entity. If a single entity, they want to be able to have a conversation with it, a joined-up, cohesive conversation, and not one that a conversation that's fractured or jarred or just doesn't flow. So I'll give you an example. A few years ago, I worked for a high street online bank, and we were the UK's largest direct mailing house. We sent more letters to more people than anyone else in the UK. The post office thought we were great. Our customers didn't know, because we were structured to send messaging based on our needs, and we had various different product owners, head of loans, the head of mortgages, the head of whatever else it might have been, all wanting to talk to a customer. So they'd identify the customers they wanted to talk to, and they would then send out their messages saying, "Dear Mr. Customer, please buy this today." And the customer from one brand could receive 7 pieces of direct mail marketing from the same brand in a month, which is crazy. Then, of course, they could rock up and go to an ATM and receive a different message. They could go inside the branch and receive another message on top of that. Then they could read a newspaper and get another offer. It's like, "You really don't know me," says the customer to the bank, and the bank says, "Aha, but I'm making lots of money, I'll continue." But actually, are you making as much money? Are you being as efficient as you possibly can? And are you actually disengaging your customer base? So we recognise that there was a problem in that domain, and that we weren't being joined up, we weren't being cohesive. And at no time did we seek to have a coherent conversation with the customer about their needs. So the solution was really quite simple. It was about putting the customer at the centre of our communication strategy. And it was about building a hierarchy of needs for our communication or our messaging framework. So we said, What does a customer need to do? What products have we got, and what indications do we have from the customer that they might like to buy? So what's their propensity to take out some of these offers? And then what channels does the customer habitually use? And now let's think about taking the leads, and yes, there are some products we would like to sell that are more valuable to us than any others. So normally, as a business, we'd like to push those as hard as we can until the customer's bought them. But actually, that might not be the best thing for the customer. So let's think about, what do we know about the customer? Oftentimes, the answer was, well, we don't know enough about the customer to do much. They won't give us their permission to send an email. Brilliant. That's the next lead then. Let's build a customer data set, or let's earn their permission to do something, and then we can move to the next lead in that customer's hierarchy. So rather than having the hierarchy based on, if I talk to you about loans, I'm going to make more money, to what do I need to know about you to serve you better as a customer? So joined up conversation and a lead hierarchy was the solution there. And as a couple of nice exit points from that, by adopting a customer need-centric messaging framework, we improved NPS and, nicely, improved margin because we reduced marketing spend and increased conversion. So it was kind of a win-win-win. What it did, more importantly, though, was it improved the customer experience. By building that joined-up customer, we talked to the customer in a language that the customer could understand to their agenda. We were relevant and we were on message. So it sounds easy. It also sounds quite scary because many of you will be thinking, yeah, but to do that, I need to join up all of my customer touch points, and I need to have that great unicorn in the sky, which is called a single customer view. Well, single customer views don't exist. Well, no, actually they do. If you've got one customer and you're a sole trader, then probably you've got a single customer view. If you move beyond that, then you probably haven't. Another example, when I'm in John Lewis, depending on my relationship to the sea level, if I go up to the top floor, I'm generally pretty happy, but I'm not as happy as when I'm in the basement, which is where all the gadgets are. So I've got a different customer view or a different customer set of intents, depending on where I am, but I'm the same customer. How are we as marketeers supposed to address all of that? Well, you don't. You collect data and you work out which bits are relevant to you. So rather than trying to pull all of the data into one place at any one time before you make a marketing decision, what you want to do is be able to connect the right pieces of data that you know have been valuable to you in the past and identify the bits of data that are missing from other customers. So if you can do all of that, you can start to join up the dots and create what you might know as an attribution model so that you can measure each of your touch points, each of your messaging strategies on the way, on the journey to your customer outcome, your call to action, your conversion point.
Yes, that's a perfect lead into just a little explanation of attribution models. And really what they do is connect the dots between how you're using your emails, how you're using your social, your blogs, your display ads, and AdWords. They all contribute to digital success. So no longer do we consider the last touch point as the point of sale. All of these different channels combined really do equate to digital success. Digital success usually does lead to business success. One of the things that I noticed about the different small business owners and entrepreneurs that made it to VOOM 2016 was the ones that made it to the top 40 really had a firm grasp of the power that digital holds. In fact, social media was used to gather viral support that got them into VOOM's Pitchathon. And as judges, we were asked to review their websites to gather information about their business and ask them questions during the Pitchathon. And not surprisingly, those who had engaging, informative user-friendly sites ended up doing very well in the competition. So that really does sort of sum up how all of these different aspects of digital marketing can lead to fantastic success for your business, no matter what size it is. So this is probably a good time to hand it back to Oliver for our second poll. Oliver?
Thank you very much. Great stuff. Thanks for that, Bernadette. We're going to turn to the questions that you've been sending in just a mo. So if you have any more questions, please do submit them now and we can get to them. But first, as Bernadette said, we're going to run that quick poll, and that question should appear on screen in any second now. And the question is, simple one again, what's your digital investment priority? What's your digital investment priority? Is it social networks, technology infrastructure, CRM, or something else? I'll just run through that quickly again. What's your digital investment priority? Social networks, technology infrastructure, CRM, or is it something else? Okay, just give you a second to vote, and then we should be able to see the results of that poll pretty quickly. Oh, and there we go. That's interesting. It makes interesting reading again. Almost half of you see that social networks are your biggest digital investment priority. Okay, that's probably a good place for us to kick off then. A lot of people have been asking us about, Bernadette, I'll turn to you first. People want to know about what's a good area for them to start their social media strategy. Some people don't really understand what the basics are, so maybe you could just run us through some of the basics. LinkedIn versus Facebook versus Twitter. How would a business use each of those, and what are the advantages, and what is sort of the typical audience they could find there?
Okay. Well, each channel does very much have its own sort of audience that they're looking to capture. So Facebook, I'd say, is the most popular generic social channel because it does cover a lot of different age groups, geography-wise. It's got global reach. The only thing to bear in mind with Facebook is increasingly the younger demographic is abandoning Facebook because they're finding their parents and their grandparents posting things on Facebook. So they're opting for channels like Instagram and Snapchat. So those are very dominant among younger consumers. Twitter, even though it's widely reported in the press, they're struggling to increase their number of followers. However, Twitter has a very fiercely loyal audience. That again does span a wide demographic, but so you really have to understand who it is that you're looking to talk to, how you're going to talk to them. There's specific languages that you speak for different channels. Again, a great source of information if you just Google how-to guides for the various social networks that are out there. It'll break down the dominant audience, the best times of day to engage, give you hints and handy tips on engagement, and you should be well set to start your social imprint that way.
Okay, super. Thank you very much. Steve, if I could turn to you for the next question. People have been asking about story arc. You mentioned Googling a story arc. I was wondering, could you just go into a little bit more detail then and explain to people what you mean by a story arc and how they would necessarily apply that to their business?
Sure. So it's a story arc is a way of taking a customer from being entirely disengaged, stroke unaware, to emotionally invested and hopefully actioning the thing that you want them to do. So there's a traditional story arc which talks about the setup, the beginning, where you introduce the thing that you're going to talk about. You then build some apprehension or some tension. So you start to ask questions in our world, and then you have the payoff, the fulfillment, and then you move into a sustained life cycle. So it's about layering on your messaging based on the context and needs of your customers. It's a very simple mechanic, but it forces your copywriters, your marketeers, and your sales team to think about the stage that they're engaged in and the stage that's coming next. And then you can start to create subplots which can deal with people who fail to do what you want them to do next, because, sometimes they just don't. So you need to have other stories that drop them back into the cycle. So it's about the setup, it's about building a crescendo, introducing your heroes, and then paying off or creating a fulfillment period or payback period, the thing that you said you were going to do, delivering it well.
Super, thanks very much. I've just got a follow-up question. Someone's asked specifically about using the cloud for accounting purposes, but I just wanted to ask it a bit more generally. Lots of people have heard about the cloud, but I was wondering if you could maybe just quickly run through some of the practical uses and advantages for a small business. I suppose this kind of thing like using a cloud-based software so that you can have access from any computer at any time, anywhere. I suppose that's a great advantage to a small business.
Yeah, so the cloud is just one of those amazing things that we couldn't have even conceived of 10 years ago even. So a great example is I know of a business today that is just 2 people strong and has access to the technical infrastructure, the technical platforms, and the technical software that I had access to when I worked for Marks and Spencer. Now they're doing that through the cloud. They're a sub 250k turnover business, but they're able to provision services on demand and only pay for what they need. So they don't need to worry about rack space and having hardware sitting in tins, because next year they're going to be ready for Black Friday and they need to scale up. All they need to worry about is the fact that they can toggle a few switches, increase their bandwidth, increase their capacity and their overhead, their headroom, so that they can handle the traffic they're planning to generate. So it enables them to scale their business far more effectively. It also gives them the ability to leverage tools, functionality, and frankly, infrastructure way beyond their spend grade far more quickly. So it enables us to almost democratize computing, because you can use a piece of computing power that you need to use. You can find an expert to help you configure it. You can connect to it in the cloud, so you don't actually need to own it. So it's almost complete virtualization of your tech stack, allowing them, these guys or us, to focus in on doing the thing we care about, which is driving our businesses forward.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Bernadette, if I'd like to turn back to you, we've got a very similar question. A lot of people are interested about LinkedIn, specifically LinkedIn, and so people if you're a business service and your customer base is other businesses, how do you go about starting a conversation with a potential new customer or client on LinkedIn? What are some simple ways that someone could do that?
Well, again, it's important to strike up conversations about trending topics. Depending on the type of industry you're in, it could be, if for business services, let's say, upcoming legislation that's being considered, or if you're in digital or publishing, advances that Google's making or Facebook is making to enable publishers to target their demographic better. It takes a little finesse, but I'd say the best place to start is look at the groups that exist within LinkedIn for your industry and participate in the conversations that are already ongoing within those groups. From there, you could probably pick up some ideas on conversations to start yourself, or sharing articles about the latest developments. So just trying to capture relevant trending topics, asking and posing a question that's relevant, that is fostering feedback versus a yes or no answer.
Okay, super. Thank you very much. And of course, on LinkedIn, there's also some good tutorials to help people understand the basics. Okay, well, I'm afraid we've run out of time. That's great. Thank you very much. Thank you all the participants, and thank you all also to our panelists for their excellent presentations today. We're going to close the webinar in just a second, and of course the recording will be available to view in due course. But once we've closed, we'd appreciate any feedback you have. So we'll run a poll, and if you want to stick around, you can run the poll and tell us what you think. And but that's about it. We're going to have to wrap up. So with that, I wish you all a good afternoon. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.